In 1989, Poland was on the brink of collapse, crushed by 600% hyperinflation. The West saw a basket case. They were wrong. They missed the secret weapon being forged in the chaos, the rise of private giants. This is how a nation went from economic ruin to a European powerhouse, built by its own champions. Imagine waking up and your money is worth half what it was yesterday. By the time you buy bread, it's worth half again. By the end of the week, your entire savings fit in a shopping bag. That was Poland in 1989. 600% inflation. Not a typo, 600%. Queues stretched around city blocks for basic goods. Shelves sat empty. Families hoarded soap, sugar, anything that held value better than the zloty. The currency wasn't just losing value, it was disintegrating in real time. Pensioners watched their life's work evaporate. Workers earned paychecks that bought less each day. This wasn't a Polish failure. This was the final death rattle of a system imposed from Moscow. A centrally planned economy so broken it couldn't even pretend to function anymore. The communist regime had bankrupted the nation through decades of mismanagement, corruption, and Soviet exploitation. By '89, the facade crumbled. Prices exploded as the state lost control. The shortage economy, where goods simply didn't exist to buy, gave way to hyperinflation, where goods existed but no one could afford them. The West watched and whispered, another Eastern European disaster. Germany looked on with pity. France shook its head. The UK offered condolences but no real help. To the comfortable capitals of Western Europe, Poland was finished. But here's what they missed. Hyperinflation is a crucible. It burns away everything weak, everything fake, everything that can't survive the heat. And what remains? The strongest steel. The most resilient people. Poles didn't collapse into despair. They adapted, improvised, survived. The zaradność, that uniquely Polish resourcefulness, kicked in. If the state couldn't provide, they'd provide for themselves. Black markets thrived. Informal networks kept families fed. Entrepreneurs emerged in the chaos, trading, fixing, building. The abyss of 1989 wasn't Poland's end. It was the forge that would temper an entire generation and the clearing of ground for something the West never saw coming. September 1989. A new government forms, non-communist for the first time in over 40 years, and they hand the economy to one man, Leszek Balcerowicz. He's an economist, calm, methodical, and he walks into the room with a plan so radical it made Western advisors nervous. They called it shock therapy. Poland called it survival. Balcerowicz looked at the burning wreckage of the economy and said, "We amputate now, or the patient dies." Here's what shock therapy meant. First, price liberalization. Overnight, the state stopped controlling prices. No more artificial caps. Let the market decide what bread costs, what milk costs, what everything costs. Prices exploded initially, but they also stabilized. For the first time in decades, supply met demand. Goods appeared on shelves because sellers could actually profit. Second, privatization. State-owned enterprises that bled money for years, sell them, open them to private capital. Let the market, not bureaucrats, decide what survives. Thousands of businesses transferred from state hands to private owners. It was messy. It was painful, but it worked. Third, fiscal discipline. The government slashed subsidies, tightened the budget, stopped printing money to cover deficits. Inflation, that 600% monster, it began to fall. Not instantly, it took years. By 1990, inflation was still around 600%, but by 91, it dropped to 60%. Then 45. Then 35. The fire was going out. But let's be clear, this hurt. Unemployment spiked. Real wages fell. Factories closed. Families who'd relied on state jobs for stability suddenly had nothing. The social safety net, thin as it was, vanished. Poles endured this because they understood the alternative. The alternative was Venezuela, Zimbabwe, Weimar Germany. The alternative was total collapse. This wasn't the Marshall Plan. Poland did this to itself, for itself. Balcerowicz didn't have a magic wand. He had courage. And he had a population willing to endure hell because they'd already been living in it. The difference now, there was a plan. There was light at the end of the tunnel. By the mid-90s, inflation hit single digits. The crisis was over. Poland had reset the bones of its economy. And now the real growth could begin. Here's what nobody talks about. Stabilization doesn't create prosperity. It creates opportunity. And Poles didn't wait for permission to seize it. The early 90s weren't just about recovery. They were about explosion. An entrepreneurial boom that transformed the nation from the ground up. Walk through any Polish city in 1991 and you'd see it. Street markets everywhere, vendors selling everything from electronics to vegetables, small shops opening on every corner, Poles who'd spent decades in the grey economy, trading and hustling under communist noses, suddenly had freedom to operate openly. And they went wild. Between 1990 and 2000, hundreds of thousands of small businesses registered. Sole proprietorships, family firms, startups before anyone called them that. The state set the rules, but the people built the engine. This was zaradność on steroids, Polish resourcefulness weaponized by market freedom. And the numbers prove it. GDP growth accelerated. By the mid-90s, Poland was growing faster than most of Europe. Foreign investment poured in, yes, but domestic capital moved faster. Polish entrepreneurs didn't need EU handouts to start a business. They needed a market, and now they had one. Retail exploded. Services exploded. Manufacturing modernized. The entire economy rewired itself, sector by sector, block by block. This wasn't trickle-down economics. This was bottom-up prosperity. Every bakery, every repair shop, every taxi driver who bought their own car instead of working for a state monopoly, they were the real architects of Poland's comeback. Balcerowicz gave them the foundation. They built the house, and the psychological shift? Massive. For decades, Poles had been told that the state would provide, that central planning was the future. 1989 shattered that lie. The new lesson was simple. You provide for yourself. You control your destiny. Success isn't granted by apparatchiks, it's earned in the market. That mindset shift created a generation of risk-takers, builders and competitors who weren't afraid to go toe-to-toe with anyone. By 2000, Poland wasn't just stable, it was growing and it was hungry. The question now wasn't, can Poland survive? It was, how far can Poland go? The answer would come from an unexpected place, a small game studio in Warsaw. 2002, a tiny Polish company called CD Projekt is distributing video games. Nobody outside Poland has heard of them. They're translating Western games into Polish, selling them in a market most publishers ignore. It's modest work, honest work. But the founders, Marcin Wiński and Michał Kiciński, have bigger ambitions. They don't just want to sell games. They want to make them. Fast forward to 2007. CD Projekt releases The Witcher. It's based on Polish author Andrzej Sapkowski's novels, a uniquely Polish story brought to life by a Polish team. The game is rough around the edges, but it's ambitious, it's creative, it's different, and it sells millions of copies worldwide. Then, 2015 happens. The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt launches. And it's not just a game, it's a masterpiece. Critics call it one of the greatest RPGs ever made. It wins hundreds of awards. It sells over 40 million copies. A Polish studio from a country that was choking on hyperinflation 25 years earlier just beat every major Western developer at their own game. CD Projekt becomes a symbol not just of Polish creativity, but of Polish excellence on the global stage. This isn't luck. This is strategy, ambition, and execution. CD Projekt didn't wait for Western publishers to greenlight Polish stories. They built their own engine, controlled their own IP, and competed globally from day one. They proved that Polish talent doesn't need permission from Berlin, Paris, or California. They proved that Poland can lead, not follow. And they're not alone. Meet Allegro. Founded in 1999, it's Poland's answer to eBay. And unlike most European markets where eBay dominated, Allegro fought back and won. Today, 67.4% of Poles buy goods or services online, and Allegro is the platform they trust. It adapted faster to local needs, understood Polish consumers better, and refused to cede ground to foreign giants. This is the pattern. Polish companies that understand Polish markets hire Polish talent and refuse to lose. CD Projekt in gaming, Allegro in e-commerce. These aren't just businesses. They're national champions, proof that Poland doesn't need to import success, it builds it. And the message to the West is clear. Underestimate Poland at your own risk. So where does Poland go from here? The hyperinflation of '89 is ancient history. The painful reforms of the '90s are over. The entrepreneurial boom of the 2000s proved the model works. But this isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning of the next chapter, and the setup is better than ever. Look at the map. Poland sits at the heart of Europe, bordered by Germany to the west and the chaos of Ukraine and Belarus to the east. Russia, once the empire that crushed Poland for centuries, is in decline, burning resources in a failing war, isolated economically, hemorrhaging talent. Germany, the giant next door, is stumbling. Energy crises, deindustrialization, political paralysis. France and the UK, stagnant, divided, looking inward. Poland is rising while its rivals weaken. And the numbers back it up. Current debates in Warsaw focus on tax policy. Should the tax-free allowance rise to 60,000 zloty? The cost, 48 billion zloty in lost revenue. But here's the framing. Poland is arguing about how to distribute prosperity, not whether it exists. These are the problems of success. Compare that to the problems Germany faces: factory closures, recession fears, energy dependence. Poland's challenges are the growing pains of a nation still accelerating, and the strategic opportunities huge. Poland is becoming a logistics and trade hub for all of Central Europe. Warehouses, distribution centers, and transport networks are booming. Tech sectors are growing, fintech startups in Warsaw, defense tech as Poland becomes NATO's eastern anchor, green energy as the EU transitions. Every sector where Poland can compete on skill, speed, and hunger, it's gaining ground. The zloty is stable. Inflation is under control. Private enterprise is thriving. And the generation that grew up after '89? They don't remember the queues, the shortages, the fear. They only know growth. They only know winning. Here's the final truth. Poland didn't just survive 600% inflation. It used the crisis to build an economy stronger, more competitive, and more resilient than the systems that tried to bury it. The private giants, CD Projekt, Allegro, and thousands of companies you've never heard of, didn't fix inflation, but they turned stabilization into dominance. Poland 2.0 isn't a recovery story, it's a conquest story. And the next phase, that's just beginning.